Now you're giving them a potential super weapon. I was already concerned 6 months ago, but now I'm worried that it's kind of running away with this to an extent that, could be dangerous much sooner rather than later, I think. Let's do it.
Okay. So, kind of the last one of this season, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a bit of reflection on all the things that we've talked about over the last months.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see not only how our positions have modulated or been influenced by what we've heard, but also what we think about kind of the trajectory now that we've immersed ourselves in all of this discussion and all of the issues that it raises.
Yeah. And also we're now a few months on, 4 or 5 months on from when we started. And actually I think quite a lot's changed just in terms of what these things can do. It's becoming clearer in some ways. I just feel like everybody's a little bit smarter about what's coming.
Yeah, I agree. I think when we started, we were kind of pulling at the tail of what we could see. But now there's been so much more, both sort of press coverage, there's much more debate within educational circles, and we now kind of can see some of the trajectories, maybe over the next 2 years, of how the technology is kind of coming through and the implications for that. So I agree. Totally. Yeah.
The other thing, I don't know if this is true for you, I'm seeing students using AI more. I've had a couple of students recently who've submitted things for me to look at, supervisions, which are atypical at best. One which was super dense, quoting all sorts of like thick, dense philosophical texts, which is not typical for a music education student. Occasionally, you get a really brilliant student who might touch on some of them, but not to this degree. And then the other day, I had a student who was just very early on. There was just something about it, the way that it was listing things in sentences. So and so talks about A, B, and C, and then this means that, and that. And that kind of listing thing is very AI. And so I just started pulling it apart a little bit and saying, well, you're talking about this thing here. What do you mean by that? Why did you include that? And the definitions were not correct. So,
okay. Yeah.
So
yeah.
It was kind of obvious, but actually the second student, if I'd read it as an assessment and I didn't have the student there was nothing I could have done but to assume that student had actually read and articulated those thoughts and had actually put together something that, when we broke down the argument a bit as we were chatting, actually the argument didn't hold up in some ways. But if I was marking by myself and I was just trying to power through it, I probably would have just gone, actually, that's really pretty good. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, great distinction.
Yeah, that's very, very demanding, isn't it, for teachers and, the whole practice of assessment. I mean, 2 observations coming out of what you said. First of all, kind of scale of usage. So I did a project at my university, it was probably 2.5 years ago when we kind of first encountered its usage. And we found that about 25% of students were using it. And they tended to be the students that were, the younger end of our student age bracket. Now, I would say, it's high 90%. I mean, it's much rarer to find a student who isn't using it for any kind of language-based task. So that's one of the things that's happened. The second thing that's happened is, do you remember those days of exam boards where you would look at the ideal kind of spread of marks across a distribution curve and say, okay, we're pretty much bang on because we've got our 10% kind of 70 plus, we've got a nice grouping around 60. And I mean, that's just gone now. That's just gone out of the window. So I'm seeing assignments coming in where it's really hard not to award everybody, a 65, 68, 70 plus. And if they've used AI and they've used it well, because of course, one of the things that's happening is students are getting better at using it, right?
Yep.
Every month, probably. So I think that's a real issue. And your other point, which is about, well, what about students submitting something at undergraduate or postgraduate level, which is more sophisticated perhaps than even teachers can mark, because they're being able to pull in all kinds of connections that is only possible through this kind of software. And I think we're only just seeing the beginning of that, because I think, again, prompt usage and specialization will just get better and better rapidly now. I think you and I have talked about our own use of prompts. We're getting better at knowing how to get more coherent, rigorous material out of it. And that takes a lot of time and a lot of skill. But you do get better. And that's, one of the points on our discussion list, that you do get better at cheating the more you learn how to operate with it.
I want to just jump back to something I think Cassie was talking about, and I think it came up in our last conversation with Sarah as well. And we were talking about AI literacies. And we've just been talking about the fact that students are increasingly able to cheat or use AI more effectively than they were 6 months ago, let's say. And also the tools help them in doing this to some degree. And I remember you talking about, actually, it was in the conversation with Cassie where you said, our AI literacy is literally just about cheating. And I just wonder how you feel about that now. Do you feel any more there's stuff we need to teach students? Or do you think actually if they've got to degree level already, you should probably better work it out, just ask the AI what they need to do? What are your thoughts?
My thoughts have really evolved, I think, on this one particularly, and partly because I didn't realize how good it was once your prompts got more sophisticated in usage. So I do think it's now a real problem. And I don't think the notion of university literacy, AI literacy courses have caught up with this. So what I'm seeing in terms of AI literacy modules, or those that are patched into existing modules, are just going to make students better at using it. And actually what we need is to zoom out a little bit and look at different ways in which the usage of it can encourage, good quality reasoning and critical thinking. And at the moment, I think what's happening is that students are becoming aware of how AI can also give you in-time feedback on how to correct for your weaknesses. So of course you can ask AI, well, look, I've got to submit this essay tomorrow. How could I improve it? What are the main weaknesses? Are there any texts that I've overlooked? Are there any weaknesses to the structure? And it just can immediately correct for that in 5 seconds, right? So I think this is a challenge beyond which at the moment AI literacy modules are prepared to address. And I think we're in this kind of transition period where what AI literacy means is we're going to show you how to prompt really, really well, and you'll get a better results. So I think there are two different kind of issues that are emerging here. We've got to design new forms of assessment. And at the moment, no one really knows what they look like. So we've got the AI literacy modules, but we haven't got these new forms of assessment that we desperately need. What are we testing? Why are we testing it? And how can we be sure that it represents student thinking? These seem to me to be ongoing and live questions to which I'm not seeing very mature answers at the moment. What's your feeling?
So
Same question.
On the AI literacies, I don't think we need to teach how. I think we need to teach ethics. And I think there's a point also here. I mean, it really affects, obviously, it cuts right across assessment, but just very blunt conversations with students going, actually, why are you here? Are you here literally just to pick up a piece of paper? Are you here to develop as a human being? Because if it's the latter, then your use of these tools and how you approach these things needs to change. And there's something in there which is kind of important. So I think there's an ethical aspect. And Cassie's research was pointed towards, actually, if you do that with students, they do respond. And I've noticed with the students where I started to pick them up and I was like, but you don't know what this means. And then I started talking about, actually, if this gets published, what's it do to the pool of knowledge? Like, what's the impact of that? If you're putting forward facts you haven't checked, you don't know if they're true or not, and you're just palming them off, and then this gets published, then the next person references and cites your work, and they cite your work, and before you know what it is, like that thing that wasn't right is now law. Like there are 20 citations all referencing that same incorrect thing. So when you start talking to students like that, actually they get it. They do start to get, okay, what's the point? Okay, I see there's a bigger implication here.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there's a need for that. I think AI literacies have to involve an awareness of all the implications for using it. So on your kind of cognitive development, the ethics of it, and also I think we need in the labour market interview tests that start testing genuine knowledge, right? So yeah, there might be part of the interview which is like, okay, tell us what you know about AI and how do you use it. Okay, here's going to be a short 15-minute test where we're going to ask about your abilities, and then you could say to students, look, it's okay if you're using it on these end of term papers, but when you go for your interview for your PhD or blah blah blah, or you go into the job market, increasingly people are going to say, okay, talk to us about this, and they're going to test your actual knowledge. So we need to build in that awareness at the moment. I think part of the problem in universities is groupthink takes over. So when students see everybody using something, you get a kind of a herd mentality, don't you? And also staff start using it. It becomes, sort of completely integrated into the way that we do education.
But it's not. And I think so I've been writing a lot of curriculums recently, and it's been interesting writing something. Been writing a music business program. And if you look at how they're currently taught, the majority of the assessment is hand in an essay, hand in a valuation, that type of thing. And all of those things can very, very easily be done. Almost every single assignment you'd see in a traditional program is AI, completely AI'd. So I've been working through, okay, well, how could you step this up? How can you make it different? And so, I mean, my solutions have been a fewfold. One, to make sure that there is a lot of practical work, thinking about teamwork, team building skills, students doing practical assignments. AI is built in from day one. So literally, one of the major courses in semester one is an AI course. They start producing products using AI and a whole marketing plan. They do essentially the whole of marketing using AI, and they'll be prompted how to do this. And the expectation is massive. It's not superficial. It's not like just do a nice essay. It's like, okay, we need graphics, we need music, we need all of the things, and you've got 4 weeks to do it. So we're going to push you on your AI. We're not superficial here. Like, it's got to be good because you've now got superpowers. Later on, I've got them actually building AI in their final year. We cover futurism, and I've got them actually building AI tools. So they're building agentic flows for AIs because I think that's going to be a tool they'll need to be able to build, and building in academic analytics into those academic tools. So we can assess how well those tools work. So you'll be assessed. You get one button, and we watch what comes out the other end. Is it good? Is it bad? If you built it well, it'll be good. If what comes out the other end isn't, And then the other thing I've been building is a lot of role plays. So, okay, here's a contract. You're going to work in a team. You've got 15 minutes, and you can't have mobiles, you can't have computers, you can't have anything. The other team are the other side of that contract. So one team is the band, one team is the record company or whatever. Then you're going to negotiate that contract. You've got 10 minutes, and you have to get a deal. But you also have to know that the contract we've given both sides has got clauses in it on both sides that might not be very good. So can you identify those? Can you negotiate those? Have you got those raw skills to do those things? And really that kind of practical skills. So it's fine you can use AI, but if you haven't got the knowledge, you won't be able to pass this program. Definitely not.
Yeah, I really like that. I really like that kind of interplay, but I think that scaling that across education at the moment is very unlikely because it requires expertise of staff, curriculum designers, assessment designers that I don't really see. There are a few people, obviously, in every department or in every school, but they are not the majority. So there's a lot of work to upskill people to these questions, right? That you're coming in with that because you've been interested in this from the word go, but you wouldn't be typical, I think, in that sense.
So, I mean, there could be a bit of a lag. I think there's also something more fundamental. Well, two more fundamental things. One is just the inertia in the system. On top of that, so these are big organizations. and they move slowly. You want to change a curriculum, you do that every 5 to 10 years. So even if we wanted to and we had the knowledge, doing it, there are barriers there. And then the other one is the money one. How many of these organizations have got the facilities and wherewithal to actually change things up quickly enough? I mean, I'm quite lucky in this situation in that I'm writing a brand new program for a course that doesn't exist. So we're not changing things. We're thinking about this from day one, trying to get it right. We haven't even got faculty at the moment teaching the program, so we can start to put things together and then find faculty to teach it, as opposed to the other way around. Most institutions can't go, well, we've got this course, we need somebody who can do it. They go, well, we've got this faculty, where do we go with it? It's a completely different set of challenges built in.
100%. But if you think of things like, I don't know, in the UK context, GCSE and A levels, to really kind of change those and to think about how they're going to be assessed in 10 years' time, but starting now, you're right. I think institutions are huge, and they change incredibly slowly. And we've got that in the context of a new technology that is changing like faster than we can even kind of appreciate ourselves, right, as people interested in the field. Every day we wake up and turn the computer on, there's something new, both just in terms of the news media that has massive implications. This week it's been mythos and all of the things about algorithms, and actually just listening to, this will be a discussion for later, but just in terms of that rate of change matched with very, very large organizations that aren't known for their flexibility and their agility in this space, I think that's a problem.
I agree. It really is. I don't know how we're going to move forward beyond it. And some of what I'm seeing is just incompetent as well. We've got policies being created that really don't address, they're like so superficial. They don't address what needs addressing in any way, shape, or form. It's like, we've got to write something about AI because everyone's talking about it. Well, what's the minimum we can do without really addressing it? And I definitely see that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I think there should be really like a 2-year holding situation, which should be integrate AI skills, but with all of the issues that we would want to equip students with, but have an end of term face-to-face exam. I think for 2 years, it's the only way through it. It's the only way through it. Whilst you're doing that, you've got to have your assessment teams getting together and say, after this 2-year period, what's it going to look like? But you've got to have some blend at the moment that doesn't cut you off from, do the students know anything, but at the same time doesn't kick AI out of the curriculum. You've got to have those two things present.
Yeah, it's really, really tricky. Can we flip around a little bit, because we had a really interesting discussion about research, and if we think essentially one of the key things we're training students to do at university is to put them on a path where, should they wish to, they go through postgraduate degrees and things, and they start getting involved with research. What that looks like, I think, is about to change rapidly. And there were a few things that really came out and really triggered me, and a few things I'm actually kind of half working on now around research. So I've got my AI research tool, which is agentic and does all kind of cool things. It's not quick. It's not like a chatbot, but you send it away and it looks through your directory of files, PDFs and things. And some of the things it can synthesize are pretty amazing. It's kind of staggering, and you can give it really atypical questions. I think I mentioned to you the other week, I gave it a question. It was coding up interviews and associating literature to it. And then I took a U-turn with those, and I said, suddenly, well, I've got some Jung in my library. Do a Jungian analysis of what's going on with each of the different participants. And off it went. And it produced this crazy document all about how we could do a Jungian analysis of academics' views of research. And the incorporation of AI, and it kind of blew me away. So these tools are getting really good. And then the thing which I found really amazing when we talked to two Daves was one of them said, well, why don't you automate the creation and the sending out surveys, and the ability potentially for AI to start undertaking interviews and And then I was thinking about it. I was like, wow, okay, this changes how qualitative interpretive this research happens.
I think, yeah, I mean, that's super interesting, isn't it? And we've touched on this in our own informal conversations. And I think there's two big implications for this for me immediately. Who knows how it will develop in the future? One is the exciting bit, like you say, we have got the capacity now to let it do a lot of the spade work in terms of research that previously would have taken human hours, many years, months or years. That for me is largely a plus. It doesn't come without some compromises in terms of things we learn when we do this, but largely a plus. But I think the thing that we've got to watch for really is the extent to which it can then have a breadth that we simply don't have in our understanding, and it's only going to get better at that. And maybe one of our conversations will be, I know, about where we're looking at not only 2049, but maybe even 2030. We're going to have the possibility of student work that we can't assess without using AI, because it has, you're going to get a music business paper where somebody has said, well, actually, AI suggested this is a potential connecting paradigm, so I've looked at that. And I might get something in music history or even music theory that says, well, hang on a minute, we can connect kind of ancient ideas of, I don't know, Chinese scales and musicology with this. And then who knows enough about this to assess it? Do you know what I mean? Without then putting it through AI. So that huge change, again, I think universities are being very slow to kind of cotton on to. There is going to be the potential for amazing research, but who's going to understand it without associate machine learning tools to market? And what does that look like for us as educators, where we need that?
Yeah. And what does it mean when, and what are we going to find out? It's really interesting because there's going to come a point where we can synthesize huge bodies of knowledge and create new paradigms of research is essentially what we're doing. I mean, the old issue has always been you got on one side objectivist views of reality and the other side subjectivist and a little bit of mixed methods in the middle. Well, when you suddenly turn your subjectivist research essentially into objectivist research, you can literally get so much research done on such a huge number of people, but it changes how it is and how it works. And what are we going to find out? Are we going to understand it? Which is your point. Even if you're a university professor, how do you understand it? Because it's too complex. And then perhaps how applied is it? Because there's another point of research, which is, does it live in an ivory tower? Always been a criticism of research. It's fine, like education research. We've got academics doing lots and lots of research around education. Does it ever make its way back into schools? Does it ever make its way back into universities? And very often not. That cycle is not working. And in some ways, this breaks that even further. Because if the purpose of research is really for application, in the end, we learn something which improves something. Perhaps this does almost the opposite.
The kind of possibilities of breaking that problem, as you say, of the ivory tower academic research. So it does shine a light on the narrowness a lot of notions of expertise that we hold to be truly valuable. But at the same time, presents us with a research world in which humans cannot understand or make the connections that large language models can do. So I don't know where that's going to take us. It's going to be assisted research, right? Because you're going to have to use these AI interfaces to synthesize large bodies of information that would be beyond the capacity of a single human academic working for a lifetime.
You're going to get
metric.
You're going to get the equivalent of an executive summary, but we'll probably call it a human summary or a humanized summary or something similar to that. It's like, okay, well, you can't understand this, but this is what this research is about. Don't expect to be able to understand it, but if you're a human, here's your simplified version. It's like, one of my favorite prompts is, can you describe this to me as if I'm a 10-year-old? It's a great prompt if you're coming up with anything.
I haven't used it, but I like the idea. I like the idea. But I mean, the philosophical and sort of ethical, societal implications of this are, something that I don't think we can even kind of understand right now. Like, what does that mean then, to have something that you can outsource expertise to, which is beyond the capacity of our so-called expertise to really hold and understand? And every time we think, oh, well, it can't do that, 2 months later, oh, actually, it can do that. It can do better. Oh, but it couldn't do that. Oh, hang on a minute, it can do that actually. Oh, it can't do maths that well. Yeah, actually, it can. Oh, it can't do music composition to that well. So you're constantly in this in this situation where I'd imagine some amazing research will be coming up very, very shortly because people will start to realize just how well it can synthesize across domains. Interdisciplinarity is great and it can do it much better than human academics can. But what does that mean for education, for expertise, human expertise, and human knowledge?
But we're out of a loop, aren't we? I'm just getting my head around how I can build essentially a supercomputer to run a model myself, which I don't actually. I found that way of doing it without having a supercomputer. But essentially, I can put a big model on a computer in my house and not just let it run 24/7. And apart from the electricity, I don't need to pay anything for it. And the power of these things, if you're using something like OpenClaw, or I've been using Claude Cowork, for it to do agentic, like really complex agentic flows, so you can give it multi-stage, multi-step things to do. There is no reason in that context why it can't do its own research. And I think we're going to hit this point where it's not about having a human in the loop even. And we're going to have, and at that point, that research is going to turn into research the AI uses itself. So agent one goes off and finds something out. Agent B goes off and then uses that in its work. So we're going to build this pyramid of AI created research over time. I can imagine is going to happen. And one side of that is amazing. I mean, there are things we probably can't get our heads around, whether that's physics or even humanities, where literally there are too many moving parts, too many things too many complex things going on at once. And actually, these models came out of that kind of big data processing. So they're designed for it. They're absolutely designed to find causation when you've got a million different parameters moving simultaneously. And so one side of me is super excited because I think we might be about to solve so many amazing things we just haven't been able to understand. You want to go faster than the speed of light? This is how to do it. Like, this is where Einstein was wrong. That's probably just a couple of years away. All of those things are probably just a few years away. But then we get into
the downside.
The existential risk of that is that if you want to start cloning DNA and doing crazy things like that, if you've got a model running on your own computer and you can hack that, which you can retrain it, you can change its weights, you can do all sorts of things. All of a sudden, the door is open for people who perhaps are not as nice as we are to do some pretty damaging things in the world.
Yeah, I think, the test case always for technology is its potential to withstand nefarious actors, right? So one of the problems with AI is that we're building a system within which nice guys and girls can probably operate within that with some kind of like ethical boundaries. And going back to what Bassem said, there's a need for some kind of like ethical infrastructure within which we operate now within education. Like, we want to use these tools for human well-being, but given we know that those boundaries will not be put in place, and that the very people developing the software say there's a 10 to 20% chance that this is all going to go haywire. Again, it's kind of quite startling that we're in this situation, right? If it was any other technology and people said it's really good, but there is a 20% chance that it blows up everything, I think we'd say, whoa, we just need to pause for a minute and have a look. But we can't pause because of all of the other socio-political, military, horrible things going on, competition between states and so on. So I think this is a real test case for our civic infrastructures, our society philosophies about what are we going to do, because something is coming our way, super beneficial, super dangerous. How do we ride that?
Yeah, I mean, even the plus sides are massive disruption at the very least. We're getting to a point now where these things are arriving in robots, and those robots will be able to do physical tasks. You need a tire changing on your car, and you need your mother or your grandmother looking after. That's not that far away. So I think that disruption, even the positives, come with massive disruption. The and how we manage that, I think it's becoming clearer and clearer. And another part of education here is that our graduates aren't getting jobs like they did 5 years ago. Those jobs are disappearing because actually AI can now do those kind of intern, first career step type jobs, and it's going to start working up and up and up and up and up and up. And so that's the positive. That's the positive side. Almost is that all the good it can do in the world is massive disruption to the world. I mean, one part of me wonders, well, everyone's talking now about perhaps collapsing population. Perhaps we're going to need AI doing this for us anyway. Perhaps we're all going to live a lovely life, the utopian version. I'm not totally convinced, but that perhaps there is one escape hatch there. And then we got the really dark side, which is the Janine DeFalco thing when we said, what's it going to be like in 2049? And she took a bit of a breath about it. And then clearly her mind had gone to the point of, I'm not sure there is going to be a 2049. You could see that's kind of where she'd got to in her thinking. And
I mean, in terms of if you just look at the field as well, and the discussions, the discourses within AI technology and development from the tech firms and the people who know, the people who are actually working on it and who know, I mean, it's not that they're confident, right? And that should be a huge worry to all of us. It's not that they're confident that it will be used for human benefit, human well-being. And we know why they're not confident because we can see how, for example, relationships with US military and AI technology firms are being kind of like really pushed through because they want to. I mean, the drone strike on the Iranian school recently was apparently a decision made by a piece of AI software. It can kind of get those things wrong, and it will be getting those things wrong, or just the way in which it might not be wrong in terms of actually who's programming it, but is ethically very, very dubious. So I think, there's going to be all kinds of problems like this emerging within the next 2 years. And I think we're also probably only a year or two away from some major cybersecurity problem that potentially disrupts everything. You're talking about disruption in the short term. Yeah, but all the banks are offline. Sorry, guys, we didn't realize, but all the banks are offline. How does the world economy? How is it going to react to that? What's the plan B? Do they have a plan B? It doesn't look like they do have a plan B. I would say they're scrabbling around for a lot of these existing defenses against those things are really, really way out of date. So if you look at things like the health service, they have very old, often computer systems, let alone, I don't know, nuclear power stations. I hope they don't.
but this is the thing, like key infrastructure. How long can a city survive if there's no water?
Going to turn the electricity off, or the salination plants. Yeah. Disaster. And the possibilities for rogue state or rogue actors to then blackmail.
But I think the concern, the rogue state, the rogue actors, to some extent, I think they're less. I'm more worried about a 14-year-old who builds a supercomputer and doesn't, because that's. I go online, I look at the stuff that people are building and how they're doing it. In the 2 or 3 years ago, you were looking at tens of thousands of dollars to run your own model, and now I think probably for a few $100, probably not even that, you can run a big model, and that's going to. I mean, that rate of progress means that in a couple of years' time, you'll be running something which is a supercomputer on your phone, which is like the intellectual power of an entire university, and that's going to be open to 14-year-olds who bear a grudge against the world because they got jilted by some girl or something. It's just at that point, the idea of the kid who goes into a school and shoots the place up morphs in a really worrying way.
Yeah. That old technology of they may have an AK-47, they may have a Kalashnikov. Okay, they can do a lot of horrendous damage with that. But you're right, it's not even at the scale of what we're thinking about now.
But then that also sends us into all sorts of. So one of the other things that came out of Janine DeFalco's conversation was the idea of AI monitoring and tracking learning, but tracking psychology of learners. and you can start to see how these arguments start stacking up. So you go, well, actually, perhaps we should be tracking learners. It might be quite useful to know when a student suddenly starts showing signs that they're not quite, as they should be. Perhaps they're starting to become psychologically unstable. And you can see the more authoritarian laws kicking in at that point of going, well, like, one, perhaps we can avoid a shooting in a school. But two, if they're a little bit brighter and they know how to use things, perhaps we actually stop somebody melting something down. And when the risk is that high that somebody online could blow up a power station or take down a bank or do something like that, then actually perhaps we do need people being tracked in our society a bit more. Perhaps that isn't a bad idea because, who wants that risk? And
It's true.
just see where it goes.
But yeah. I mean, the balance of risks is almost an unfathomable problem, isn't it? You're right. We can't allow that to happen. And AI might even be AI used in security firms might be suggesting full scale surveillance. Here are the markers, a bit like the Prevent program at the moment, which is bits of papers and emails. Now it's kind of scaled up and is monitoring everyone. But you're exchanging that for a totally different society and a totally different way of living, where someone maybe even knocks on the door of one of your relatives or one of your students and says, "Hey, we've seen a few posts. We've had a little bit of look at your kind of interest and blah blah blah. And we've detected actually some personality markers that would suggest vulnerability to the state. So off you go to this colony. I don't know how it plays out from there, but again, it's every sci-fi movie that you ever saw. So I really do think it's a problem. You're absolutely right about the 14-year-old computer genius who's not now going to pick up a gun. They're going to go online and start hacking things because they have a. That's the other thing, isn't it? The breakdown of those social infrastructures creates more people who are outside looking in who have a grudge. Right now, you're giving them a potential super weapon. So yeah,
the flywheel is in motion. You can kind of see the flywheel in motion, and it's picking up speed. Or every rotation, you can just see how it happens. You can see how it happens. I think the clarity on how it could happen has got stronger for me. When we first had the conversation a while ago, I was like, well, I can see how somebody could create something. I'm starting to see more of the different elements involved in that and more of the counter elements. And I can see why potentially more democratic societies are starting to look more authoritarian. Because if I was a leader and I'm getting briefings from people about this, which are, I would guess, going a lot deeper than we are, I could see why if you're in power right now and running a country, you might be very, very concerned and thinking, actually, we need to roll out more AI to monitor everybody.
Yes, yeah, and how do you work your way through that without kind of state intervention at a level that just isn't going to happen? Coordinated state intervention, a kind of a China, America, Russia, I don't know, kind of coordinated action to say, look, we've got a real safety problem on the horizon here. This is what we need to do. Because that's not going to happen, doesn't look likely to happen. I think you're right. We're into a very, very difficult period of working out freedoms versus safety.
Yeah, and so rotate this back into education. Actually, one of the key things that a school should be doing or a university should be doing now is ethics. It feels like it's I have this thing about the kind of three domains of learning, and everybody just talks about cognitive and Bloom's that pyramid. And actually, there are two more, that psychomotor, but particularly the affective. And I've been saying for a while that, your values, your beliefs, those things. I mean, I know they're really problematic because whose values do we give to children? Like that becomes a really contentious issue. But I think ever more so, again, it's just so vital now that we're really thinking about the ethics of the use of these tools. Back to, what is the AI literacy? Well, it goes beyond AI literacy, but part of AI literacy is actually you're responsible for an awful lot beyond yourself now with these tools, and you have access to them even as a kid, probably. And but I mean, the responsibility to a 10-year-old to go, well, no, you're playing with this now, but actually you need to be really responsible because this can do A, B, C, and D, which is going way beyond your house. I don't know how we balance it. I
How
mean,
do we respond? Yeah,
yeah,
I agree. It's another reason why this is a real sort of flare moment, why it shines a light on some of our insecurities and vulnerabilities as societies, because social cohesion is probably, at its weakest point since, I don't know, let's just say the Second World War as a rough kind of comparison point. I think you have got more, you're building in more potential for people, for groups who don't like each other within society, for individuals who have a grudge against general sort of power structures and so on, and all of that potential to act towards it in a kind of a nefarious route that we already have. We're just giving those people a new set of tools in which to cause harm. I don't know if we've got enough. You need a defence that covers so many different angles, including things like social cohesion and the mental health and ethics and the kind of philosophical underpinning of everything that we do that just is a bit weak now, I think. Going into the 2030s, I think we're not in a good state of, the health of the nation is not good. So that's what worries me. I think if you were looking at a different kind of society, you could see how these things could be integrated more wholesomely. But right now, I don't see that as a possibility. And I think that's changed for me since we began.
Janine DeFalco, her answer was philosophy. It's exactly where she'd got to. It's like you need to get people thinking a lot deeper. And I guess part of the reason why we did this podcast in the first instance was really to give ourselves and hopefully some other people, when these get released, a sense of it. But at the same time, like you can't help but feel that even the technology we had pre-AI was starting to tear societies apart. I was doing a little bit of research, and Sweden recently and Norway have both pulled iPads and things out of classrooms. They were straight in, kind of both feet. Let's get tech into classrooms. Sort of 10, 15 years on, they're both going, let's get tech out of classrooms. But just generally, I mean, I have all sorts of issues around how democracy can withstand social media, if it can at all. And with the advent of AI, deep fakes, all of those things that are happening, with the ability for an AI bot to be coded up in a way that just means that it will scrape the internet for things and send out memes and create accounts and blast the world with whatever it wants to do. And very often from unscrupulous actors, that will be things on both sides that are contentious, just to pull people apart in society. You just feel we're being pulled apart simultaneously at the point where everybody on those factions, and we've seen where that's gone in certain cases where there have been shootings and things. You just feel the potential for there to be more serious things. It's there.
It's there, yeah. So I think in terms of kind of sort of summing up what we've discussed over the last
I know what you're laughing
6 months, but I think you and I think had some of these kind of views and feelings in an embryonic form 6 months ago or whatever. But I think they've taken shape for two reasons. One is we've learned a lot more because we've spoken to a lot of people within different kind of working environments from us. We've also then been alert to what's going on generally in the news cycle and in the kind of the tech world, and we've keyed into that, and that's then fed back into, okay, in terms of what we're looking at in this podcast, what's going to be the impact and influence of these things. And I think I'm a lot more concerned than I was at the beginning. And I was already concerned. I was already concerned 6 months ago. But now I'm worried that it's kind of running away with this to an extent that, could be dangerous much sooner rather than later, I think. And I don't just mean in terms of the apocalyptic visions. I just mean in terms of societal well-being and health and educational integrity. Are we set up to defend educational integrity? Education is our main focus. So,
shall we go to that question? 2049.
Yeah.
So where are you? Does 2049 exist? And if so, what do you look like?
I think if 2049 exists, and I think there's definitely a chance that it doesn't exist. I think if it does, it's going to be a very, very bumpy ride. And I think that if we survive it, there's going to have to be a point at which society say, hang on a minute, we've integrated a lot of these tools and now it's doing, immeasurable harm. How do we roll some of that back? A little bit like the smartphone debate that you were mentioning, tech in schools that you were mentioning, but on a completely different scale. Now, for me, that needs to happen sooner rather than later. I hope it happens in the next 5 years. Where we'll be in 5 years, early 2030s. We'll maybe then have, 10, 15 years on 2049. If it doesn't happen then, I think we're going to be in real problems. So we do need some kind of revision of like, how do we use these tools, but what are the dangers and how do we protect ourselves? That conversation needs to happen. It needs to be coordinated, interstate. It needs all civic bodies to participate. And there needs to be very, very frank conversations where people really get real about what's coming. You?
For me, I'm still, again, I saw the dangers, I also saw the benefits. I'm still got the same basic philosophy that underpins it, which is the only way we avoid the worst case scenario is by using it for the betterment of us. So I still don't think that banning it is going to be viable. I don't see that happening. And actually, increasingly, I mean, unless people are going to walk around from house to house and literally look at what's on people's computers, it's out there. So it's done. There's already enough power in what's freely available on people's computers that it's happened. It's out there. So then we're in that situation of, well, how do we stop the worst case scenario? And for me, that's the thing. Burying your head in the sand doesn't work. Saying I just hope it wasn't there doesn't work. The thing that does is to engage with it, to understand it more deeply than we did before, to have more of these kind of dialogues like we've been having, and then to really embed so many things which come from it and the positives that come from it. I think it's out of the positives that we can start to balance these things out. I don't know if we're fighting a losing battle. It's possible, but I do think whatever's going on, I kind of feel that education is super important here, and that's both in formal institutions, but also potentially outside of those formal institutions. Australia's got an interesting plan about how they embed AI in society and get community groups and people through those learning about it. And I think that kind of civic engagement with AI, but with deep conversations attached to it, I think is what we need. Let's say I'm not sure if we're not fighting a bit of a losing battle and where this is going to end up. I think we're in for a rough. Actually, I think next 5 years. I think the next 5 years, and when they're talking, I don't know if you saw stuff about quantum computers recently. They reckon by 2029, there's no encryption. So everything that's been encrypted up to this point is going to be freely read by the big state actors like the US and Russia. Bitcoin and all those things, they're done for. That encryption is gone. Mm-hmm. Where that leaves us. Yeah. So I think it's the next 5 years.
Yeah. I one of the interesting things is when we look back on these podcast discussions, even perhaps next year, we're going to go, wow, how naive these guys were. They saw some things, but they couldn't see. It's the things that we can't see, I think, that worry me the most, because it's so rapid. It's such a rapidly expanding space. And it's not just speed, it's what that then, the speed of what? The speed of new kind of capabilities that we can't necessarily understand fairly soon as we get towards kind of super intelligence. Even if it isn't super intelligence, it's something that's incredibly smart and smarter than a human. So yeah, I think let's return to the conversation at some later point with some perspective of time, and let's see where we are. But the risks will need to be balanced and measured.
I think at that point we should end. Thanks, Adam. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you.